It was supposed to be another bright, lively episode of Family Feud. Steve Harvey in his element, flashing that wide, familiar grin, the crowd roaring with laughter, lights dancing across the stage like tiny suns. But no one, not even Steve, knew that by the end of that day, the laughter would vanish, the cameras would stop, and the Family Feud stage would hold one of the most haunting, unforgettable moments ever seen on television. It began with a simple white envelope. Steve held it in his hand, the paper trembling slightly beneath his fingers as if it knew the secret sealed inside. The audience, usually alive with energy, sat frozen. And then Steve did something he had never done in his entire career. He turned to the cameras, raised his hand, and said, "Stop filming." That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It started 3 weeks earlier, at 2:47 in the morning, when an email arrived in the Family Feud production office. The sender was a 62-year-old woman named Margaret Hayes. She hadn't slept properly in months. Her message was raw, written with the kind of desperation that makes your hands shake on the keyboard. "Steve," she wrote, "my son refuses to believe he's adopted. He's tearing our family apart trying to prove I've lied to him. I need help before I lose him forever." When the production team read it the next morning, the room went quiet. Family Feud had seen countless families fight, bicker, laugh, and cry. But this wasn't about winning points. This was about a truth that could destroy or save a family. They forwarded the message straight to Steve. He read it twice, set it down, and said softly, "Bring her in." Margaret's story unfolded like something out of a tragedy. She'd adopted her son Thomas when he was 3 days old in 1985, through what she believed was a reputable, legal agency. She raised him as a single mother, working 2 jobs, missing meals so he wouldn't have to, loving him harder than life itself. Every birthday, every Christmas, she told herself she'd reveal the truth when he was old enough to understand. 18 came and went, then 21, then 30. She never found the courage. Thomas grew into a man anyone would be proud of, a high school teacher, husband, father of 2. But 6 months before that email, everything shattered. His wife Sarah had bought him a DNA testing kit as a fun gift. What came back wasn't fun at all. It revealed a half-sister named Rachel. When Thomas called the number listed, a woman answered and told him something that cracked his world in 2. "I'm your sister," she said quietly. "Our mother gave you up for adoption in 1985. That night, Thomas confronted Margaret. She confessed everything through tears, begging him to understand. But he couldn't. Decades of love vanished in an instant, replaced by betrayal so deep it poisoned everything. He accused her of stealing him, of lying about the adoption, of hiding his real family. He moved out, cut her off, and started obsessively hunting for answers. Sarah tried to hold their family together, but Thomas was unraveling. When Steve Harvey read the full background, he wasn't just thinking about television. He was thinking about family. "Let's do this," he told his producers, "but we're doing it with care. No sensationalism." What nobody on the crew knew was that Steve quietly ordered an independent DNA test. He needed the truth before anyone else spoke another word on his stage. The day of filming arrived. The Family Feud studio glowed like it always did. Bright lights, polished floor, laughter from the warm-up comic. The big board flashed colors across the crowd. People were expecting games, jokes, maybe a funny family rivalry. They didn't know what was coming. When the cameras rolled, Steve walked onto the stage to his usual thunderous applause. "We got a little something different today, y'all," he said with that familiar half-grin. "Sometimes family ain't just about who wins the game. It's about what holds us together." The crowd cheered. No one had a clue what those words would soon mean. Margaret walked out first, nervous but dignified, clutching her hands like prayer. Thomas followed, rigid, angry, avoiding his mother's eyes. Sarah walked between them, trying to keep the peace. The applause faded quickly. You could feel the air change. Steve greeted them softly, his usual booming charm tempered with empathy. "Ms. Margaret Thomas, we're not here to play a game today. We're here to find a little truth." For 30 minutes, the conversation followed a pattern. Margaret showed adoption papers, legal documents, proof. Thomas shook his head, refusing to believe any of it. "Those could be fake," he spat. "You kidnapped me. You stole me from my real family." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some people looked heartbroken for Margaret. Others couldn't blame Thomas for his fury. Steve listened, nodding, letting them vent. Then he leaned forward, voice low, sincere. "Thomas, I hear your pain, man. But sometimes pain ain't proof. Let's look for the truth together." Sarah finally spoke, her voice steady but trembling underneath. "Steve, my husband doesn't sleep. He's obsessed with finding his real family. Our kids barely see him. I don't even know who I'm married to anymore." The studio went silent. The Family Feud board lights dimmed slightly. Steve rubbed his hands together slowly, eyes thoughtful. He'd seen thousands of emotional moments, but something about this hit different. Then, almost as if speaking to himself, he said, "Hold up. Before we go any further." He reached under his podium and pulled out a plain white envelope. The sound of the paper brushing against his hand was the only sound in the room. "This here," he said, "is the result of an independent DNA test. We collected samples from both of you before filming, and we also got one from your half-sister Rachel." Margaret's face drained of color. Thomas leaned forward, gripping Sarah's hand so tightly her knuckles whitened. Steve's tone changed. It wasn't the playful hosts anymore. It was a man stepping into something serious. "This test will tell us once and for all who's telling the truth. You could have heard a pin drop." The audience leaned forward. Cameras zoomed in. Even the hum of the air conditioner felt too loud. Steve stared at the envelope like it might bite him. He'd done thousands of reveals, seen tears and triumph. But this, something about the red pen mark on the corner reading "Urgent, call immediately," made his stomach twist. His producer had tried to talk to him earlier. "Steve, we need to discuss those results." He'd waved her off. "I can handle it." But now, standing under the lights, the weight of that envelope felt like a loaded gun. He tore the seal slowly, unfolded the paper, and began to read. His eyes scanned the first line, then the second, then stopped. He blinked. His expression, usually solid as stone, broke. His jaw slackened slightly. "Oh my God," he whispered, the audience murmured. Margaret covered her mouth, trembling. Thomas's voice cracked. What does it say?" Steve looked at him, then at Margaret, then down again. He read the words a second time, hoping he'd misread them. He hadn't. He lowered the paper. His voice, usually booming and confident, came out thin. "Stop the tape," he said quietly. Then louder, "Stop filming now!" The director froze. The crew hesitated. "Steve, we're live." "Not anymore," Steve said sharply. "Clear the audience. Everyone out." It was chaos for a few seconds. Confused murmurs, footsteps, whispers. But within minutes, the Family Feud set was empty except for Steve, Margaret, Thomas, Sarah, and a few staff. The bright lights dimmed, replaced by the low hum of the emergency lighting. Steve walked over to the family, the envelope still trembling in his hand. "What's in this?" he said softly. "Is going to change everything you thought you knew." Thomas could barely breathe. "Just tell me, is she my real mother or not?" Steve nodded slowly. "The DNA test shows Margaret is not your biological mother." Thomas let out a half scream, half sob. "I knew it. I knew she lied." He turned toward Margaret, rage and relief warring across his face. But Steve raised a hand. "Wait, that's not all." He looked at the paper again, his eyes wet. "Thomas, your adoption was legal. Margaret didn't steal you. She saved you. But the test also compared your DNA to Rachel's. And Rachel, she's not your half-sister. She's your full sister." Thomas froze. The words barely registered. Steve swallowed hard. Same mother, same father. The silence that followed felt like it could shatter glass. Margaret began sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. Sarah grabbed Thomas's arm, whispering, "What does that mean?" Steve took a breath, steadying himself. "It means your biological family kept secrets darker than you can imagine." The lab noted, "Well, it said your parents were part of a long pattern of inbreeding, generations of it. Rachel's family didn't give you up because they couldn't care for you. They did it to break the cycle, to give you a chance." Thomas's anger melted away. He turned to Margaret, tears streaming down his face. The woman he had accused of being a kidnapper was, in truth, the one person who had saved him from a life of pain. "Mom," he whispered, the first time he'd called her that in months. Margaret reached out and they fell into each other's arms, weeping. Steve watched quietly, wiping his eyes. "We're not filming this," he said softly. Not ever. He stayed with them long after the cameras stopped. He brought in a genetic counselor to explain everything, to help them understand the science and the pain tangled together in those results. He arranged therapy sessions, checked on them personally. Before they left, he pressed a card into Margaret's hand. "That's my number," he said. "If you need anything, you call me, not the show." 2 weeks later, the episode never aired. The network wanted it. "Steve, this will break records," the executive said. But Steve shook his head. "Some things ain't meant for TV." Instead, he recorded a special segment about the ethics of DNA testing, the dangers of seeking truth without being ready to carry it. He stood on his stage, empty now, the spotlight soft and golden. "I've been talking to families for a long time," he said, his voice low and steady. "And I've learned something. Sometimes the truth don't set you free. Sometimes it just shows you how heavy love really is." He held up a copy of that white envelope. "This little thing right here held a truth 3 people will carry for the rest of their lives. But you know what else it held? A reminder. The people who raise you, who stay when things fall apart, who love you without a reason, that's family. DNA can't define that." Months later, Steve received a letter from Thomas. He shared part of it with permission on another episode. "Steve," it read, "I spent half a year hating the woman who saved me. When you stopped filming, I thought you were protecting her. But you were protecting us. You gave us a chance to heal before the world could judge. My mom, because she is my mom, is the only family I ever needed. Thank you for showing me that before it was too late." Margaret framed the adoption papers that Thomas had once called fake. They now hang in her living room. Every Sunday, Thomas, Sarah, and their kids come for dinner. The white envelope sits sealed and empty in Steve's office, next to a Family Feud trophy and a Bible. A quiet reminder that compassion matters more than ratings. Years later, when an interviewer asked Steve what moment defined his career, he didn't mention the Emmys or viral clips. He just smiled and said, "The day I turned the cameras off." He leaned back in his chair, eyes distant. We live in a world where everybody wants to see everything. But not every truth belongs on TV. Some truths belong to the people who lived them. That moment on Family Feud was more than television. It was a lesson about humanity, forgiveness, and the kind of love that doesn't need to be proven by DNA. Because family isn't about who you come from. It's about who stays when you have nowhere else to go. And if this story moved you, don't just scroll past it. Subscribe, share it, keep it alive, because the next story might remind someone that love, real love, isn't written in blood. It's written in the choices we make, in the arms that hold us when truth hurts most, and in the hearts that refuse to give up on us, even when the world does.